now move on to item 9, which is the leisure review. Ash, I think you're going to introduce this.
Thank you, Chair. Yep. The report seeks Council's approval for the specification to outsource the management of the leisure services based on the heads of terms which are set out in this report. I'm sure members are quite familiar with much of the detail in here.
Sorry, that's page 88 for those who are rummaging around on their iPads.
Okay, continue.
Sorry,
just to go through some of the key points, and the heads of terms have come out of the consultation process with users, members, staff, and also advice from the external consultants. Some of those key points are, they start at 2.3. We're looking to have a contract which will run for 10 years, but will also give us the option to extend for a further 5. The pricing policy, which I know from the workshops and discussions with individual members, is something that we were keen to protect. In terms of the concessionary and discount scheme, you can see which we are suggesting is protected, but also what I tried to stress in the report is that we do need to give the new service provider the flexibility to adjust what we refer to as commercial prices. So these are prices that relate to, such as the health and fitness market, which are very much driven by market demand. We need to be able to give the service provider the flexibility to generate the revenue. That also applies to the programming, but we have, again, at the request of users and members, have protected some of the things that are in place within the programme, such as use of the leisure centres for elections, Shrovetide, and the use of leisure centres for civil emergencies. Also, because of the relationship that we have with the school at Wirksworth, we've got the protection of pitch bookings there. We've got the creche at Ashbourne, which will be protected for the first year of the contract, and the Blueberry Cafe at Arc. The last bullet point relates to the current clubs and user groups, and we are ensuring that there is protection for the first 6 months of the contract, and as with the current arrangement, those clubs and the leisure centre manager, leisure centre management can actually amend the bookings, whether it be time slots or allocations in general. The opening hours that we currently have in place are referred to in here as core hours, and we're protecting those core hours. Should the service provider wish to extend those hours, it will be through negotiation with the District Council's contract manager, who's yet to be appointed. Under 2.8, referring to maintenance and life cycle costs, the process in which we're procuring this contract, we've opted to take what we refer to as variant bids, and this very much depends on the level of liability that the District Council wishes to retain within the contract. And what I mean by this is, if the contract, we want a price from the contractor for taking over 100% of the liabilities of the leisure centres, but also, which is an industry norm, we're looking for a price for transferring the liability of the leisure centres with the exception of the structure and major equipment and machinery. So the bids will come in, and we will be able, through the evaluation process, decide which is the most financially suitable package to the District Council, considering those liabilities. We have also put in there a surplus share agreement, so should the contractor find themselves in a position where they are making a surplus on the contract, the split of that surplus will be split 50-50, with 50% coming to the District Council. I've also highlighted the need for performance reviews in there. There'll be a monthly review meeting with the contract manager and the contractor, as well as an annual meeting, and that information will then be presented to members on an annual basis on the performance of the contract. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Councillor Wyatt?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to move this. This has been through member workshops, it's been through C&E, and it's the next really important stage for the leisure review. Just also like to point out that Ash, Dave and Rob have put an incredible amount of work into this, which is, should be recognised. Thank you.
Councillor Hodgson.
I'll have to second the motion. I would like to thank all the team for all the hard work that they've done. Really appreciate it. And listen to all the comments that members have made at the workshops and other ways.
Okay. Councillor Stack.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ash, for explaining the situation. My question is, what procedure and how close are we to knowing the list of prospective tenders for these contracts?
Thank you, Chair. We are aiming to advertise the contract in 2 weeks' time. The week commencing the 11th, I think it is, of July. And there'll be a period then for potential bidders to submit their interest. But until that point, Councillor Slack, we don't know who that will be.
Right, thank you for that. Thank you.
Councillor Mike Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Chair. Can I echo the thanks that have been extended to Rob Wilkes, Dave Turvey and, of course, Ash for the preparation of this tender, which has been a long time in gestation, but is about to be delivered, and I know that it will reap benefits for us. And hopefully also for service users, as well as on the economic financial front. Can I offer thanks too from all those at Worksworth who have had long discussions with you over this period, particularly about the partnership of the school, the foundation governors and the use of the pitches, etc., and also about being able to push forward something that sought to reap the benefits of Worksworth's particular characteristics in having that sort of geographic hub in its relationship to the school and the health centre. Forgive me for being a little parochial, but I would like to think that when the contract goes forward, that we don't lose sight of the excellent work that has been done by the Leisure Advisory Committee. Now, I know that some reassurance has been given about this, but I'd like to feel that this is perhaps something that, whilst not formally within the tender, could be raised with whoever takes on the contract, that they consider the setting up of some sort of liaison group, that even if it's a coalition of centres and service users. Can I also just mention too, I know it's something that I have raised elsewhere, that the council does look at some long-term strategic view about the car parks and the car parking, particularly around the Worksworth Leisure Centre, just to acknowledge any increased use of them. I know this is something I've mentioned before, but just generally speaking, I think there's very little now that needs adjustment within this, and I'm very happy for it to go forward now and to go out to tender, and that we move quickly on with this process, and I know it will be a successful one.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come on to some of those points that you've raised, Councillor Ratcliffe, in terms of the user group, it will be part of the background papers, and quite confident that any contractor coming in will want to continue to work with those groups. They will certainly be given the background history. The car park situation, it is not an easy nut to crack, as we know. It is used by the leisure centre, the swimming pool, the health centre, and on occasions the schools. And we're very much aware of that, and all parties are trying to come up with something to improve that situation. But on busy nights there is limited parking, and it does cause an issue. But again, that's part of the background history that will be passed over to the contractor as part of the handover.
Thank you very much, Councillor Finesse.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Well, I certainly support what I understand to be the recommendation. I'm just questioning the literacy of the actual wording of the recommendation. It just sounds as though there's a word or two missing.
There is. I do apologise. It is to approve the specification based on the heads of terms for the outsourcing.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm interested in the public's reaction to this. This is a major move by this council, and in my meetings on a Southwark community environment last week, I've not heard any aspect of what the public take is on this. I have heard there's been a negative article in the Map of Mercury, I don't know if that's correct. So, what reaction have we had from the public?
I've not seen the article, Councillor Purdy. What I would say is that it's a mixed bag, really. The responses that we got through the consultation, some of it was really positive. There were questions as to why we needed to do this. That was quite a common theme. Lots of people are happy with the current service. I think the key message is, for us, we're not looking to reduce that, we're looking to enhance it. So hopefully, as we go through, we'll be able to alleviate any concerns that people will have had.
Thank you. Councillor Sue Burford. Oh, sorry. All right. Sorry. Councillor Martin Burford.
Thank you. Obviously confusion there. I agree with Councillor Purdy actually in terms of the public's perception of this, and scepticism has been expressed to me about what looks like tantamount to privatisation of the leisure service. So obviously I've put their minds at rest as far as I can, but there is that scepticism still and suspicion amongst the public, I suspect. But my question was to do with the, if you like, procedures for tendering, in terms of, and obviously that either the officers or the consultants must have given some sort of guide price, if you like, for this tender. So obviously officers are aware of what to expect when the tenders are submitted, but are there any, is it like any other tender that's submitted where you don't have to accept the lowest price, that obviously the pros and cons of different tenders are considered, and then the most viable one is the one that's recommended for approval?
Yes, it is. I mean, as I was saying when introducing the report, Councillor Burfoot, there are options which we need to consider as we go through the evaluation process, and that will relate to what level of liability we wish to retain. So we need to consider those factors. What I would not want to do is to say what we're looking for as a return. Obviously this is a competitive process, but yes, you're absolutely right in what you're saying in the sense of we don't have to accept the lowest, and I think we've tried to make it clear within the specification, and as a working group our focus has always been on ensuring that, one, we have a quality service. We know that our client base, our customers, are very keen on having a high standard of service, and I think if we start to reduce that, or a contractor comes in and looks to reduce that, people will vote with their feet. So we don't want to see that. And also, and I do think it's clear in the specification that we want to retain our links within communities. We've spent a number of years building links within communities and public health and so on, and we don't want to lose that.
Councillor Irene Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Chair.
I concur and won't repeat the things that my colleague has said, and the Labour group have certainly gone down this line. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in a position where Worksworth would have been included. To make that quite clear, the outsourcing of things, I have a real great problem with. But I do think, and agree with my colleague, the way in which the council officers and the leadership have worked to be inclusive of that. So we have to give up some things. But we are a rural area, and there are difficulties with agreements. I sat here at this council when Dales Housing was going out to source to our very own first housing association. And I'm not going to be too contentious, but as I sat with listening to the update by the leader of the council, the experience of some of my constituency of what is happening and what is being lost by Dales Housing is considerable. And I'm so sorry. You know, I've had every week we get a situation, and it can take me quite some time to get through to Waterloo Housing. I was on the phone for a long time this week trying to get through, and that's after the residents have tried to get through. So while we have officers that are monthly monitoring the situation, I want to think that through the 10-year contract or the 15-year contract with extension, we still have that available, because we've lost everything as far as I can see. Perhaps not, perhaps a stakeholder that is said, but I don't think that voice gets heard. I don't think it does. So I do wish this well. It is the only option that we can take forward. But if we start charging as a district council and our leisure car parks as such, you're going to really inhibit the increase and the accessibility for some members that are coming in, because times are going to get hard in terms of affordability of leisure services and access. I'm not talking about those that live nearby. I'm talking about the hubs that we create for our market towns. And it's really important, because there's not always those leisure services available in the villages, etc. So I am concerned about that. So transport and allowing that accessibility of people to come in their own cars, even, you know, is quite important. And so I will just make that. And I think that I do wish it well, and I think that we want this and we want it to succeed, but we also need to learn by outsourcing that things aren't always in the long term the best for us. But I know that it's not mandatory for this council, and it's certainly not this council's fault for why we're outsourcing. It's the government's fault, and I'm going to say that because I can't scream loud enough to say, let us be listened to as local councillors, local government. It is not what we expect, and it has been really difficult being the ones that have to lead and accountable for so much stuff, and yet we're the ones that have been penalised by central government for years. Thank you, Chair, for listening.
Thank you very much. Councillor Donnelly.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'd like to congratulate our Spanish team on the report. I think it's been an excellent report. Speaking as Ashbourne member, I'm delighted that we built into that report the retaining of the Shrovetide venue at the leisure centre, because I tried to think what would happen if we hadn't done that, because there's nowhere in the town can take it. So I'm delighted to that's built into it, and I'm very happy to support the report. Thank you.
The motion's been moved and seconded. There's no more questions. Can we move to a vote in support of the recommendation? abstentions? No one against?